Hello, hello, hello. How are you? How is everyone there?
Good
Wow.
night.
Hi, hi there.
Hello, Uncle William.
Hello, how are you? Hi,
How are
Tolu.
you?
Hi, Dotini.
Yes, hi, everyone. Uh, wow, it's a wonderful time that, it's so good to be here. And I'm really excited about today. And I hope we're going to have a great time today. And Barkley Williams, we're so happy that you're here. I know that we've just brought you up on stage straight away, but we'll get along with this straight away. So, for me, how are you feeling?
I'm good. I'm excited. I'm feeling pumped. It's 10 p.m. here, but my energy levels are still high. Ready
Yeah.
to learn.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've had a very busy weekend and just traveled to Newcastle, which is about 2.5 hours drive from Sydney for a birthday, back and forth with the family, and just arrived less than an hour ago. But Bankali, what about you? I know that you've had a very busy week, and it's Monday.
Extremely busy, right? I had to jump up out of bed and get ready this morning, but I'm excited regardless. I'm ready, good to go. Nice to meet you too, for me.
Yeah,
Right.
thank
You
Thank
you.
you.
too. Awesome to have you here.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you for having me.
so we're so honored. We're so happy to have you here, and we hope that today would add value to the lives of all our listeners. This is the third session. We started um, 2 weeks ago now with Eden Owonka talking about emotions, and last week we had Damiloa Toimbo. We discussed thoughts. Today we'll be going deep into perception. And I'm hopeful that today we'll give a lot of people clarity about what perception is and help them become better at using that aspect of their mind and cognition. So that's our expectation today. We're hoping more and more people will join us as we go on in today's conversation. And for everyone watching us from anywhere in the world, we want you to just stay with us. Make sure you're focused. Make sure that you're paying attention. Today's all going to be about perception today. All right. So make sure you're paying attention. Make sure you're sort of intentional about being here. Avoid any distractions as much as possible, and just get the meat out of today's conversation. So I reckon before we go on, we'll say what a prayer. So, for me, do you want to pray for us, and then we can get it?
All right, let's pray. Almighty Father, we thank you for this wonderful day. We thank you for everybody watching, everybody that's ready to learn. We pray that you open our hearts, you open our minds, and you help us to be receptive to the word of knowledge we're going to receive today. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
Amen. Great.
Amen. Awesome. So before we get into it, I'm just going to give a quick introduction to Bankole Williams. Like I said earlier, it's an honor to have you here with us, and we're so excited. But before we get into it, I'll just quickly introduce you. So Bankole Williams is a consultant par excellence and a peak performance coach who has a proven record helping organizations develop their human capacity to surpass their annual financial targets. He is a renowned force in consulting and was given the Coaching Icons Award for his exceptional work in human capacity development in 2019. He is also a social reformer with a goal to solve the problems of unemployment and underemployment through his foundation, Live Your Dreams Africa Foundation. Through his foundation, over 21,000 youth have been empowered, and in 2019, his foundation created 392 jobs in Lagos. Wow. My colleague is presently on a mission to create 1,000 jobs across the 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria. My colleague Williams is a master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, a UK certified life and career coach, and a certified management consultant. He is widely regarded as a behavioral change expert. He is an emergent force to be reckoned with in the field of management consulting with over 10 years of experience in human resources and consulting fields. He is also a recipient of the Lagos State Award of Excellence in Youth and Social Development. He is the founder and principal consultant at LYB Consulting, a firm committed to delivering consulting interventions that lead to transformational change. Also, his facilitation skills are no doubt prolific, as he currently provides consulting interventions for banks and different organizations. So without further ado, please help me welcome Macaulay Williams.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for having me. I am really excited to be here. I'm looking forward to a very insightful conversation. So just to confirm, can I just jump right in?
Yes, you can. You can. You can. You just jump right in, and I will, come in as you allow me to. We will have that conversation. Yes.
Okay, beautiful. So beautiful. Today I will be talking about perception, and I think that it is such an important topic, when we talk about the brain, the mind, as it influences our results, right? Perceptions usually will stem off sensations, right? So I think it will be nice to establish that foundation for people to understand what perceptions are, right? Sensations are different from perceptions. Sensations are any concrete conscious experience resulting in a stimulation of our sensory organs. So I'll take that again. Any concrete, conscious experience resulting in the stimulation of our organs. So when we receive stimulus from the environment, we're experiencing a sensation. There are different sensations that you are feeling in the room that you are in right now, listening to me, right? And your organs, your sensory organs are picking up those signals and those vibrations and things like that. Now, your perception is different. Your perception is the sensation you are paying attention to. I'll take that again. I said your perception is the sensation that you're paying attention to. So if I ask you, for instance, how does your bum feel on the seat right now? Your attention all of a sudden goes in that direction, and you are forming a perception based on that sensation. Now that sensation occurred, it was already there, right? But the minute you pay attention to it, you form a perception of that experience, right? So perception for me is the organization, identification, and interpretation of sensory information. Let me take that again. It is the way we organize the organization, identification, and interpretation of sensory information. And there's so many signals that we're trying to receive from the environment at different points in time. Just talking about the sensory perception of sight or sensation of sight. At one glance, from what I gather, over 2 million bits of information is trying to access our minds through our eyes, right? At one glance, in the room that you're in, there are several things there. There's a picture frame that's staring at you, trying to get your attention. There's a person in front of you trying to get your attention. There are things around, so all those things are trying to gain access into your mind. And the mind cannot take more than about 194 bits or so of information out of all of that, right, into your sense of sight, right? So it is important that we understand that there are so many sensations, but the ones we're paying attention to, right, is our perception. So perception, like I said, is the organization, identification, and interpretation of sensory information in order to represent the world, right? So there is the way the world is presented to us. There is the way we take that information in and represent it, right? So sensation is the presentation of information. Perception is different. Sensation is the way information is presented to us, so it's the presentation of information, right? Perception is the representation of presented information. So perception is how we now represent the information that the world presents to us. So everything in this world is raw data. Everything is raw data, right? And if only people understand this, I'm telling you, it can change their worlds, right? Everything is raw data. Anything that occurs to you, right? You are the one giving it an interpretation, right? It's raw data. Somebody wakes up in the morning, sees you, is just offended by your face and decides to slap you, right? And thankfully, you're not telling me that that thing is raw data. Yes, it is raw data. You The interpretation that you give is very subjective. Your perception of that experience, right? Some other person might say, this is an opportunity for personal development, to test my capacity for patience, right? That's a way to interpret that situation and to really think myself that I'm a master of my emotions. Another person will see that and say, what's that? We in my country, Nigeria, we have a thing for being very expressive like that. That will have such an experience, and the person will be like, how dare you do that? That is an insult on my person. And I am saying to you that all that we experience in this world is raw data, right? It is our thinking that places the value on the situation. So I saw a quote, and I think it was Aristotle who said that everything you experience, there's nothing good or bad. It is your thinking that makes it so. Now, some people will rock their boats. Somebody can say there's nothing good or bad. It is thinking that places the value. So, Barbara, how about somebody who straps himself with a bomb and blows up a place? Are you telling me that that's evil? In the mind of that person, his perception of the situation is what he's doing is good. His own perception is different from your perception. So can you see how we are the ones placing values on experiences? And the minute you shift to this perspective, right, you discover how powerful you have always been, but you are relegating the power that you possess to the background without even recognizing it. All the while, every suffering, every pain you encountered, it was not just a function of the experience, it was a function of your interpretation of the experience. You had the capacity to place a value that will leave you empowered. But we have been conditioned over time to think that it is the external situation that predetermines our interpretation and ultimately our experiences, right? So perception is subjective and it is formed by the individual based on certain experiences that we've had. So perception is shaped by our learning, right? The more exposed you are, it would influence the kind of perception that you have of the situation, right? If, for instance, a Christian, if you read the scriptures, you see that there are 4 gospels written by 4 different people, and sometimes you read the same story, and you wonder why these 4 people in that same experience, because the way one person narrated it was slightly different. The things that they focused on was slightly different from the other. So how exactly did it happen? I am telling you that the perceptions of the individuals also inform the narration, also inform how they convey or communicate information. So someone like Luke was a doctor, he was very educated, he was into detail and stuff like that. His own narration was different from the fishermen, right, who narrated things, a certain way, right? So learning plays a role. Another one is memory, right? Memory shapes your perception, right? The strength of your memory and your recollection of an experience will determine how you represent that particular experience. And for a number of us, not everybody, but our memories can be very flawed, right? And to make up for the flaw in our memories, sometimes we make up the memory. But I'll get there. To make up for that gap in memory, we make up, and it's very unconscious. We have put up a story to fix that gap, right? Another one is expectation. A number of times we are prejudiced, so we prejudge situations before we even have the experience. So we have an expectation of the situation such that when the situation occurs, we are looking for how that situation fits our expectation, and that shapes our perception, right? Another one is attention, right? A number of times we think we are paying attention, but we are aloof, right? We may be physically there, but our minds are somewhere else. There's a difference between hearing and listening. Some people right now are hearing me, some others are listening. The minute I ask a specific question about what I just said, so for instance, what was the last word that I mentioned? The minute I ask that question, all of a sudden your attention level rises, right? And you are like, okay, what was the last? And your mind actively is involved. And I'm saying that that quality of attention influences your perception. If I told you that at the end of this conversation, you will have to, write an examination, and your ability to respond to specific questions will determine whether you make certain amounts of money, right? Or maybe millions of dollars or something like that. Your attention will shift. It would immediately shift. And I'm saying to you that these are some of the things that influence the way we perceive circumstances and situations. So perceptions are formed through a process, right? And there are three things that are critical in determining, the way, the process through which we form our perceptions. There are three things. Number one is believing, number two is distorting, number three is generalization. So every day in our life experiences, we are always deleting stuff, right, from our experiences. And this
sorry, let me interrupt you there, because you're released a lot. There's a lot to unpack in what you've said, and I think it's very important for us to build up before we go to some of these potential problems that can occur with our perception, and which can then become our everyday reality. I just want to, for those who have just joined, just to sort of recap some of the things you've said, and just to put a bit of emphasis on that. So I think the first thing we've established here, that perceptions are not sensations. Sensations are non-negotiable. Sensations are your conscious experience of your environment, of your world, your eyesight, your pressure of the skin, your taste, your smell. Those are all sensations. If you walk into a room that is smelly, you can't negotiate that. You don't have an option. But your perception is your own focus, is what you direct. I like the way you put it, the representation or representation of that sensation in your own mind is your perception. So what you decide to focus on is negotiable. So you can decide to focus on a particular sensation, even though you may not be able to determine whether or not the sensation, you have that sensory experience. So I think that's very important to sort of mention and to reemphasize. And the other thing that you talked about, the subjective nature of our interpretation, the interpretation of our experiences, and that is shaped by our memory, that is shaped by our learning, that's shaped by our exposure, and that is shaped by our past experiences, our expectations. All of these things shape the way we interpret our experiences. So for those who have just joined, that's where we are at. So this is really key. Now, before Bankole goes further into some of the problems and how perception can be maladapted in our lives in a way that it can alter our experience. Now, let me just make one or 2 points about some of the the science behind perception. All right. Now, perception is part of the cognitive process that is complicated. So it involves a blend of your sensation, processing of the sensation, and then critical reasoning. So it involves part of your, the sensory nervous system, which controls all your sensations. And that is taken to the brain, a part of the brain called the sensory cortex. I'll bring my brain model again. Okay, so we've got the sensory cortex. So you have the sensory cortex, which which receives and interprets sensation. So the first thing is getting that sensory experience, and the next thing will now be integrating that sensory experience with your memory, with your critical reasoning, in order for you to have a perception. So it's quite complicated, the process of generating perception. But there are three key steps, and then this is based on sort of neuropsychometric analysis. There are three basic steps in order to form a perception. The first step is called selection, the selection process. So basically, that is what Bankole Williams was talking about, focusing on a particular sensation. We know that our bodies are exposed to sensations that are beyond our capacity for perception and to beyond our capacity. And so we need to be able to focus on different sensations per time. Now, the factors that determine what sensation we focus on would include things like the intensity of the experience. So if you were in a room and somebody just comes in a red or purple dress, that's very intense, very different color. You're likely to remember the woman in the purple dress. You're more likely to remember the person who has a who's bow-legged, all right, in the choir, because that strikes you. So you're likely to pick that person out of so many other people. The other thing that can, lead to that the other factor that can direct our attention, which is what perception is repetition. So when you're exposed to the same thing over and over again, you're likely to perceive it very quickly. You're likely to see very clearly. Today my wife and I were driving on the highway and we saw a Maxda, one of these new Maxda cars. Now my brother-in-law just bought a brand new Maxda some maybe last year or maybe the year before. All right, and I told my wife that, you know what, we're beginning to see these Maxda cars everywhere, because one is parked in front of my house maybe every second week when it comes to visit us. And so that has sort of, because of the repetition in our minds, we become. So I told my wife was one that actually made a comment that looks like this car is very popular. I said, no, it's not very popular. It's because Sam Tayo drives this car. We see it all the time. Now, we've been seeing it before, but our attention has not been diverted or directed to it. But because we now know he's got this new car, it's something that has become the other factor that can help with selecting experiences is change, sudden change. Have you noticed that you get into a room that is smelling of nice perfume, you perceive it after a while, there's habituation of the experience, meaning that sensation is dampened and you don't smell it anymore. But then somebody else will come into that room and say, oh, it's smelling. Well, when you came into that room, yes, you perceived this odor. The odor, your brain dampened that sensation. All right, because you were focused on other things. That smell never went away, but you stopped perceiving it until the next person came, and said, well, what are you burning? What are you cooking? Something is smelling. Well, you were in the room. You'd forgotten that, yes, that smell was there. Now, that smell the odor never went away. But what happened there was that your perception was shifted away from that smell. That smell went into the background. Okay, so that is selection. Quickly, before I bring back Bankole, sorry. The next thing is that once you've selected the sensory experience, based on all of this, maybe through repetition or change or intensity, the next thing then is that your brain will organize these experiences. So, there's a process called the process of organization. And organization basically means that your brain, which is the part of the prefrontal cortex of the brain, arranges the sensory experiences in a way to make sense, in a bit to interpret it. So for your brain to interpret that experience, your brain needs to arrange it properly. Now, I'd like to do just a very quick experiment, and I'll bring Tofumi back on. Tofumi, come back on, okay? I want to share my screen and show this very sort of images, and I'll get you, Tofumi, Tofumi has not seen this, by the way. Tofumi has not seen this. Let me see if I can share my screen. Tofumi has not seen this, by the way. So hopefully, Tofumi, you'll be able to help me out here. All right. You'll be able to help me out, Tofumi. All right. So can you see this, Tofumi? What can you see? Just tell me one word. What can you see?
Two faces looking at each other.
Two faces. Can you still see it? I've taken it off. Have I taken it off?
No, I can't see it anymore.
You can't see it anymore. Okay, so you saw what Tofumi saw. Tofumi saw two faces facing each other. If I tell you that is actually not what that image is, should I show you again?
Sure.
Should I bring it up again? Okay, let me try to bring it up again. Okay, let's bring it up again. Where is it? Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I'll just go full screen. Okay, I think I've done that. Okay, I'll just show this anyway. You tell me, what can you see? Can you see it?
Yeah, it looks like a white base.
Okay. So on the second view, you're seeing a white vase. Well, that's actually what it is. All right. So there's a principle of the figure and ground, which talks up, which speaks to the organization of images in our brain. All right. And this is a well-established principle where, when you superimpose two things, one can be in the ground and one can be the figure. All right. And so you can see two faces here. Someone else sees the vase. All right. But actually, when that image was designed. Now it just tells you, it speaks to that organization. And sometimes, once you selected a sensory experience, your brain will, based on the intensity of the experience, determine what will be in the background. Let me ask you one more. Let me show you one more image, and let me see what you would say to this image. Let me bring this up again and share, and I'll see what your. So for me, which of the blue dots is bigger?
The one on the left.
A or B? A or B? A or B?
A.
A.
Are you going to tell me they're the same size?
They're the same size. Absolutely the same size. They are the same. This is the so this speaks now. These are not optical illusions. These are not illusions. We'll probably come to illusions if we have time to talk about the science behind illusions and some of this magic or what people do and all that, because these are all sorts of altered perception or altered states of perception. Okay, and if we have time, we'll talk about that. But that this image here that you're seeing here, they're the same, absolutely the same size. But of course, because the darker blue or navy blue, is it navy blue or dark blue, whatever circles that are here are smaller, it makes this relatively in your brain, your interpretation, you see this as being bigger because they are smaller. You know what? This is a whole message on its own. This is a whole message on its own about perception. That sometimes when you're surrounded by people who are less than you, you see yourself as being bigger. All right, but surround yourself with people who are bigger than you. All right, you see yourself as being smaller, but you're the same. It's just a matter of perspective. All right, so the same person who is a PhD holder will be master student and he'll be like a god, and then when he's with other professors, he's like, he doesn't know anything. So you get what I'm talking about. All right, I will go back now. Let me bring back Bankole Williams. Well, I just wanted to just bring in some of the science of. Oh no, let me one or two more. Of this actually. Tofumi, before you go, so I'll just do all this straight away. Sorry, Bankole Williams. Is that okay? Can I share this? I'll just share another one for you, Tofumi, and I'll just see if what your thoughts are about this as well. I'm not sure you've not certainly not seen this. What is this?
A dog?
A dog. You think it's a dog?
Yeah.
You think it's a dog? What about this? What is this? This.
Ooh, B and 13.
All righty. Okay. All right. So, Tiffany, I'll let you go now. But you see, now, the point I want to make there is that in the organization of sensations in the brain, all right, now there's a principle of closure, which is where the dog is, where there are gaps. There are gaps in that perception. But based on your past experience, all right, you fill in those gaps. Now, your past experience may not be reliable. All right, and I know that Bankole Williams will speak to that. That that I really connected with that when he was talking about that. The gaps that we're feeling with our memories. All right, sometimes we use our memories, old memories, to fill in. You're in a relationship and the guy is not talking. His body language is not right. You are not sure what the guy is communicating. But based on your past experience, you think yes, he is doing something. So you fill in the gaps. All right, and you attribute an interpretation to his silence, all right, and you let that define the relationship, and of course you keep repeating the same pattern over and over and over again. So there's a lot of science and to some of the behaviors. There's an understanding, a basis for some of these behaviors. So Bankole Williams, I'd like you to go on with what you were talking about, and we'll probably then focus more on how people can get it wrong with perception and how we can help them to get this right. Thanks so much.
No problem, no problem. I really love the images that you showed, particularly the one of the dog, right?
Yeah.
But where was the dog now, right?
Yes, it was a dog. Yes, it's actually a dog. You got it right.
Right, I really like that. Beautiful, beautiful. And I love all the things you've mentioned because it really just also sets a good foundation for what I'm about to explain, right? So back to what I was saying. Perceptions, how perceptions are formed. There's a process that we all go through, and there are three things that we do normally. The first thing is that we delete information, right? And you gave an example of the car that you started seeing everywhere, right? And two things that people would say. Number one is that they'll say, for the very spiritual folks, they'll say it's like God is speaking to me. I was on my own one passed. In fact, the second one splashed water on me. This is from the Lord that this car is mine, right? So sometimes they say that, right? The second thing that they'll say is, it's like this car is everywhere. It's popular. Everybody's buying it. And the truth is, it's neither of those things, right? The fact is, you have been deleting that car from your experience. The minute you place a degree of importance on it, and obviously like you said, by a virtue of the repetition of that information, you are now selecting it out of the possibilities that could have accessed your mind, right? So we all delete stuff every day. All the sensations in the environment were being received by our brain all at the same time. We can run mad. Do you understand? There's so much happening at the same time around you. And if your brain takes all of that information, you can literally run mad. So there's a part of the brain called the reticular activating system that recognizes, so it's like a filter. It shuts off some information and allows some information in. So first thing you need to recognize is that on a daily basis, you have been deleting things from your experience. Could it be that the answer to the prayers that you have been making have always been around you, but your preconditioning has caused you to delete that answer from your experience? So more often than not, the answers are around, but because of preconditioned perceptions, we are not those things. So the point is, every day we are deleting stuff. There's something that I call being hypnotized by your thoughts. Sometimes we are hypnotized by our thoughts, right? Have you ever been walking on the road and then you bump into an old friend and the friend walks past you, and you have to tap the person and say, did you see me? And the person like, wow. They deleted you from the experience. Why? They were hypnotized by whatever it was that they were paying attention to, right? There was a different sensation in their head that they were paying attention to, right? And obviously that made them not see you, right? What other things have you walked past that actually you have noticed? And that happens to us, right? The second thing is distortion, right? Distortion. Every day we all distort information. And I am telling you that a lot of times we are cooking up stories that are not the actual things that happen. I'm telling you, this thing happens a lot of times. And especially when people are stuck in an experience. We found out that sometimes over 50% of people's narration of an experience is inaccurate.
Yes.
It is they've colored the story, they've added elements that didn't happen. And the reason why people unconsciously do that is to justify their position. So to justify that emotion of guilt, or that emotion, for instance, of anger that you feel about what that person did to you, you rehearse the experience in your mind. So we have this thing of going over that thing that happened. And in the process of going over what happened, just to justify yourself or to feel justified for the emotion of anger, we add elements that really did not occur, right? We begin to over-process and over-analyze. Could you imagine how you were looking at me? I'm sure this is what you were thinking. For me to have been thinking this way, it must have meant that X, Y, Z. You are doing all of those things, and The frequency with which you revisit that situation determines how much of coloration occurs and how much of discussion occurs. You keep revisiting that thing, and because your body has an addiction to that emotion, to justify the addiction, it is creating things that didn't happen. And by repetition, repetition enhances retention, meaning the more times you repeat the story and the lie, the more you are more convinced that he did a particular thing that he really did not do. Because the brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. Just repeat an experience, or it's repeat a lie so frequently, very soon the brain accepts that it really did happen. Right? So we all do that, discussion. And the third one is generalization. Generalization is basically when something happens to you, and like Dr. Nee said, there is an intensity attached to that particular thing that happened. And because there's an intensity, that thing now colors your lenses and becomes how you view life generally, right? So I'll give you an example. And I think you related something like this. A lady dates a particular guy, right? And the guy does something to her, maybe offends her in a particular way, or the relationship ends, right? Maybe they were dating for 7 years, and then the relationship ended, and it was a very painful one, right? And maybe that person was from a particular state, maybe Sokoto, just random states, right? The next time a guy from that area, or it might not even just be from the area, a guy that has similar mannerisms is down to that. So he has similar mannerisms with that other guy. The next time that kind of guy shows up, just because of those cues which you attached to that intense emotion, that guy's mannerism now becomes a trigger that recreates the same emotions that you experienced previously. So all of a sudden, you have prejudged that particular guy, and you have said, this guy looks like that other guy, and I can almost guarantee that the same kind of experience that I had with that guy is what I am going to have, right? And we all do this thing. We have generalizations that occur. Some people will say, oh, so in Nigeria, where I come from, we have 3 major tribes. They'll say, all Igbo people like money, right? That's a generalization. Does that hold true for everybody? Some people, even in their minds, right, and they're staying back for the years, all Igbo people, right? Some generalizations, people of a certain tribe, all men are XYZ, and we all have those kinds of things where, we judge the situation because of the intensity of a prior experience, right? So these are some of the things that are responsible for our perceptions. And, Dr. Nee has already explained a bit about, the perceptual process, right? So you encounter something that seems unfamiliar, and you want to make sense of the unfamiliar. That's how we are. That's how we begin from perception. Something is unfamiliar. You are trying to make sense of the unfamiliar. So first thing, you are open to the information cues. You're trying to make sense of that situation. So you become open focused to the cues in that environment that would help you try to make sense of the situation. The second thing is that you now actively begin to seek cues to resolve the ambiguity. So that complex thing, you are actively looking for cues, and these things happen in microseconds. They are actively looking for cues that will help you make sense of the situation. Now, once you actively look for cues, you now switch into categorization, meaning that you are trying to create a category or attach a category from a previous experience that helps you make sense of the situation. So you search for more cues that confirm that categorization. Once you've attached a category to that thing, all of a sudden you then become narrow focused, and you are looking for more cues that will confirm the categorization. And the fourth one is the interesting one, is that you now actively select your perception and you delete and distort anything that does not match your initial perception. So there might be other cues that can be pointers as to the interpretation, but you now consciously delete and distort those cues because they don't match the categorization that you have already given, right? And
sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you there. Now, let me give you an example, and I would like you to speak to this and just sort of build on this. Because this is what I see almost on a daily basis when I go to work. About 30% of the patients that I see with neurological disorders do not have an organic disease, meaning that they don't have a real pathology. All right. A lot of this is due to chemical imbalance in the brain from underlying stress, anxiety, or blah, blah, blah. Typical example, a woman whose mom had multiple sclerosis or died from a brain aneurysm develops a headache. All right. That's a sensation that most people get. That's a sensation. Headache is probably the tension headache is the most common symptom known to man. Every single person in their lifetime, even within a year, most people will have some form of tension headache throughout the year. Now, she gets a tension headache, but she doesn't see it as a tension headache. The first thing that comes to her mind, based on her past experience with her mom with multiple sclerosis, brain tumor, stroke, or whatever it is to interpret that experience in the light of what had happened to her. So she starts to think that, well, yeah, maybe I've got a brain tumor. Maybe I've got a brain tumor. And every time she focuses on that, she starts to focus on the headache. Now, the circuits in the brain that are responsible for perceiving or interpreting the pain sensation coming from the scalp become emboldened. So rather than reducing natural endorphins to dampen the pain, she actually exacerbates the pain. The more she focuses on the pain, the more the pain becomes big. The more the pain becomes more intense. Oh, I've got a brain tumor. I've got a brain tumor. And Panadol wouldn't work. Nothing would work. Nothing would work. It would not work because she's now activated her stress system. Her cortisol levels are high. Adrenaline levels are high. She's now already having a delusion, a false belief, all right, based on her past experience. And our interpretation of the headache is now not a simple headache. I'll take Panadol. I'll stop arguing with my wife or my husband. I'll sleep. And I'll wake up the next morning and I expect to be well. She doesn't expect to be well. She wakes up in the morning and is like, where's the headache? Where's the headache? Oh, yeah, it's there. It is there. The headache is there. And then she comes to see me. You know how the woman, like a month ago, I had to tell her, don't come to see me anymore because she believes she's got Parkinson's disease. Wow. This woman was well. I examined her. Parkinson's disease that has no cure. Parkinson's disease that is progressive. Like in 10 years' time, she'll probably be in the nursing home, crawl, on a wheelchair. And I told this woman, I said, ma'am, and it wasn't for secondary gain. It's not because she wants to get an insurance benefit or she wants to get, money from work cover or income protection or life insurance, whatever. No. This is an unemployed woman who is on, Social Security. She has nothing to gain from it. But she just believes, all right, now, based on the family history of Parkinson's disease, she had some unsteadiness one day, which has gone away. But she believes. Do you know that she's still taking up till today medications for Parkinson's disease for a disease she does not have? Wow. Now, I want you to, I really, that's sort of my lived experience. And I want you to sort of speak to that, those kind of case studies. And most of these patients, they go from doctor to doctor, from doctor to doctor, wanting them to confirm what I have.
This is, I love what you just shared because it's something I'm very passionate about. So trust me, I'm going to share some really interesting insights. I believe, and I'm convinced about this thing, that our cells are always spying on our brains, right? Our cells, they are always spying, as in the conversations in our heads. So it's almost like our cells are waiting for signals as to how to manifest, right? And the signals on how they would manifest is hinged on the perception that is formed in our brains, right? And there's something called gene expression, and some of these things are maybe not traditional conservative medicine because there's an arm of medicine called epigenetics that I believe in a whole lot, right? And what I found out is that our genes have multiple ways they can be expressed. One gene can be expressed in about 35,000 ways, several expressions. And what determines the expression of the gene, of your genes, is your perception. Perception determines whether your genes are upgraded or downgraded, right? It's the perception. So let me explain, right? When there is a threat or you perceive a threat, sometimes it is not a threat that is the problem. Sometimes it is the perception of a threat. Do you understand? It might, you can see a white blanket, and it's a white blanket. But your perception could be ghost. And that perception is formed out of stories that you have been told. Right now, there's no threat. But because that's what you have perceived, what happens is that you go into stress mode, right? You go into fight or flight mode, you're afraid. And once there is fear, right, there are hormones, and I call them primitive hormones. They are hormones that your body secretes in, adrenaline, norepinephrine, cortisol. Now, whilst these things are protective, they're supposed to be preservative, right? When there is a real threat, so that you can preserve yourself. However, on the long term, they are harmful to health. So cortisol staying in your body over an extended period is degenerative to your body, right? And when cortisol now gets into your bloodstream, your blood is the culture for your cells, right? Your cells are, they are floating in the culture of your blood. And when a chemical like cortisol is there, that creates an internal environment for your cells. And just think, so let me put it this way. We're talking about perception of a human being. How about the perception of a cell? Right? So your cells are now perceiving your internal environment. So just think of a cell like a human being. And the cells now react the same way you react to a threat. They react to the threat based on the internal environment that you have created. And that reaction is a contraction. Contraction, fear is the emotion that contracts. Contraction of your cells and everything. They will not function optimally. And obviously, it would lead to the manifestation. See, if we understand the intelligence of this body, when you are saying, you're already saying, oh, I have this disease, I have this, you are signaling your body to create the experience of the disease in your body. The same way you can have the right perception of healing and health, and your body has the capacity, your body is like a mobile pharmacy. It has the capacity.
Bankole, speak to this. This explains faith to an extent, isn't it? This, I know we cannot fully explain faith and spirituality when this, in this way. But this is also a way by which or through which faith signals to ourselves, isn't it? That when we hold the belief and the expectation and the hope of being well, we communicate with ourselves, all right, and distress them and get them to a state of wellness. What do you think?
Very true. Very, very true. I totally agree with you. I think the problem is that we only choose to see some of these principles from spiritual lenses. There are also scientific ramifications to these things. So they can be explained using cause and effect, right? So and I think that when they are explained that way, and we understand the process, we are more receptive to it. It now makes sense. It's no longer hocus, like some of us have thought it to be, right? Your body reacts, even, all these things, they are in scriptures. The Bible says, a merry heart maketh, is like good medicine, right? It's good medicine to the body. It's not just there. There's a science to this thing. Merriness in your heart releases feel-good hormones that becomes the culture for the upgrading of your cells, right? There is a science to that. So when you hold a belief about something, what we have assumed over the years is that something needs to happen for there to be a reaction in my body. So something needs to happen on the outside, and then, so for instance, I need to feel the healing in my body for me to exhibit gratitude. And that, I think that's the old model of reality. I strongly believe that you need to begin to feel the emotion of gratitude for your wellness, for yourself to be signaled to experience the wellness.
Yes.
Right. So that's why for faith and belief, you are calling the things that be not as though they were. So they haven't physically manifested, but you work with the conclusion, not even just an assumption, the conclusion that they have already manifested. And you take the position of one who has experienced the result, so that conditioning, that condition you have taken will condition your body and send signals into the environment for the creation of the tangible form of that thing that you are seeking for. Right. So yes, I do agree that definitely explains the principles of faith.
Absolutely. And in fact, what we're looking at here is so profound, because our perception is our interpretation of our world. Our perception is our reality. Someone said there is no reality. Your reality is your perception.
True.
All right. Your reality is your perception. Donald Trump, probably the most divisive president ever. I was speaking to one of my friends who is from Nigeria. He's an American citizen yesterday, and he told me he voted for Donald Trump in the state of Maryland, where he knows Donald Trump would lose. All right. But as far as he was concerned, his own perception was completely different. He wasn't by what other migrants were saying or whatever, his own view. And he was sharing with me his own view of this man. All right. But it's the same person, the same experience, but everyone has different perceptions. So we interpret our world based on our perception. I think you need to know, if you're watching this, is the question you need to ask yourself is that, what are those things, the baggage you're carrying? What are the past experiences in your life that is allowing you to interpret the experience you're going through right now the way you are? All right. Why do you always think, that somebody is against you, for example? Why is it that if you stumble on the road, you feel they are out to chase you? And by the way, you're living in Europe, you're living in America, you still think there are witches and wizards somewhere in the village with a padlock trying to remote control your life. Oh, they've come again. Why? Perception. Why do you interpret everything that happens to you in a way that, and for some people, it's, a sense of low self-worth, a sense of low self-esteem. I see people, particularly in this part of the world, there are quite a number of people who are in Australia and New Zealand and maybe the United Kingdom watching this right now, who in your daily life, you're meeting with people who do not look like you. And you feel that they don't like you. You feel that, anytime and I'm not saying there's no racism now. I'm not saying there's no discrimination. But sometimes if you've been a victim of racism, there's a tendency for you to interpret every negative experience in that light. So if a bus driver looks at you in a way, you think, oh, they're racist. Everybody suddenly becomes a racist. Generalization. Oh, they're all bad. They're all bad. They never want, they never want our good. They want to subjugate us. And you know what happens every time, especially for those who are here, you're migrants, you cannot fully enjoy, you cannot fully benefit from the opportunities of where you are if your perception is colored by prejudice.
Yep.
If you're always part of the people that feel that your people are against you, yes, I'm a black person, so people are against me, they don't want me, they are racist, you will never see opportunities. You will never be, your eyes will always be closed to opportunities, because your like Bankole said, you will delete unconsciously, you will delete those experiences, those positive experiences, because you are only looking out. Remember, the brain is biased. The brain works like an autopilot. The brain likes to reinforce already established facts, patterns. Thank you so much. So circles are already formed. Your brain, for example, the first 25 years of your life, you develop a lot of circuits based on experiences. Your brain wants to keep reinforcing those circuits. So that's why learning something new after the age of 25, starting a new behavior is hard, because your brain is just naturally wired to reinforce old behaviors, old patterns of thinking. So if your parents have always been telling you that if you marry somebody from a part of the country, from a part of the world, oh no, 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 you will realize that you would always want to. There's a tendency for you to deal with people from that point of view. Now let's go forward now to talk about, disorders of perception, and then talk about how we can help people get, what are the ways out. How can we help people? Now, from the medical point of view, I will just quickly talk about two main disorders, and then I would pass on to Bankole Williams to actually just expand more about this from his own, life experience with dealing with people and all that. Okay, we have two broad types of, problems with perception. We've got illusions and hallucinations, and they're the opposite of each other. So illusions are when you misinterpret a real stimulus. Okay, so you see something and you interpret it as something else. All right, like a typical one is the mirage. If you're driving on a hot day, hot sun, and you think there's a pool of water in the front, but you get that there's no pool of water, it's a mirage. Actually, it's because of the refraction of light through the hot wind or the hot air. Okay, that makes it look like there's a pond of water there ahead of you, but that's a mirage. Now, it's a real stimulus. Remember, the other thing I have to say, and actually last week when Dami was here, we established that one of the key differences between perception and thought is that perception can occur. Perception is stimulus dependent, whereas thought is stimulus independent, meaning that you can generate thoughts without contact, without stimulus. Whereas with perception, it's a bit different. Now, Bankole, the other thing I would like us to talk about is perceiving things beyond our sensations, or how can we expand the scope of our sensations? All right, how can we perceive things beyond what our natural sensations can perceive? I like us to talk about that, talking about vibrations, and how can we read people? How can we really connect with people? Because that's really important. But back to what I was saying here, illusions are wrong interpretations of real stimulus. And that can happen in a relationship. For example, when you misread a guy who's scary, you misread his interpretation, you misread his advances of care for maybe he's interested in you. All right, and there are a lot of people who are have illusions of somebody that they have a lover, but the person it's an illusion. Yeah, that's it's a very simplistic way of expressing what an illusion is. The guy is just being nice to you in church, all right, but you think you're telling everybody that is interested in you. All right, you misinterpret those advances. And when it comes to hallucinations are occur when you perceive, there's a subjective perception without a real stimulus. So basically you're picking up sensations and selecting sensations without the real actual experience. Very common in the medical world. I've got patients who have got dementia who will still see people crawling on walls. They will see people crawling on walls. If you've got old parents, also old grandparents with dementia, you will understand what I'm talking about. Some of them will just say, oh, they'll be talking to their late husbands or to their grandparents or and that for them is a real experience. You try, for those who have worked in nursing homes before, you understand what I'm trying to say. You can't convince this 87-year-old demented woman that she's not talking to her mom. The only way you can deal with that is to give her some, Seroquel or some, olanzapine or something to just, knock her out. But she will be fooled because that experience is real. She has heard something. You can't convince her. It's also very common with schizophrenia, with mental illness, auditory hallucinations. You can't convince that person that they are not hearing. They are not hearing. They're hearing. They are hearing something. So it's a real perception for them, okay? But it is pathologic. But sometimes hallucinations may not be pathologic. They may not be indications of disease. So some people may have hallucinations because of dementia, because of some of these brain disorders. But sometimes people can have hallucinations when they go to sleep. I'm not sure whether it's happened to you before. Sleep paralysis. You go to bed and you're about to wake up and you can't move. Or some people, you go to bed and just before you go to bed, you start to see something. Or you see, oh, are you calling me? Or it's as if someone is calling you or talking to you. And that can happen as well as you go. So those are. I just thought I just mentioned that because sometimes these are states of altered perception that can occur in our lives and from a neurobiological point of view. But now let's now bring this to our everyday life. Our everyday life. If perception is the real way, is the actual way we interpret our world. When things go wrong, how can we fix it? So if there's somebody eventually, I think we should speak to this. There's somebody here who feels that yes, this is me, you're describing me. What should they do?
Good question. I think the first thing, self-awareness kickstarts the process of change.
Mm.
The first step is becoming aware of your own perception. So what I call your own patterns, right? Your own recognize that you have owned a narration, right? And we have perceptions about different things. So I think one way to start is to look for the most disempowering perception you have, maybe in a specific area of life. So think about where you struggle in, right? You're trying to produce a particular result, but you have struggled severally, in that particular area. And we all have specific areas of struggle. For some people, it's in their health, some others it's in their finances, some others, it's in their careers. So identify the current area and be honest with yourself where you're struggling in. It is more than likely that the perceptions you have formed in that area do not support your desires. Can you take that again? I said, look for a specific area where you are struggling. You're trying to produce a certain kind of result, and you're not getting those results. It is more than likely that you have accumulated perceptions that are not in agreement with your desires. So you want something, but you have a set of lenses that color your mind, your mindset, and condition your behavior away from your desires, right? And it's very unconscious. People don't realize it, right? A typical example would be money. Some people have tried to work hard, produce measure financial progress in their life, and they're struggling. It is very likely that their perceptions that they have about money or making money that is getting in their way. And until they identify those perceptions, so there are different kinds of perceptions you have about money. Some people have a money avoidance, I call it a money avoidance script. They don't even know. Ask them, do you desire wealth? They will say yes. Yet they have perceptions that cause them to avoid money. I'll give you a typical one. A typical perception is anyone who is wealthy must have done something illegal to get that wealth. And it's very unconscious. They see somebody and they see that the person has made money, maybe someone they used to know in their past or something like that, and they've already prejudged. They've already landed at a judgment. I'm sure this guy must have done, so they start connecting dots. They must have done Yahoo. And he traveled, he traveled to England some years back, and he made some connections there and came back, and he's always on his laptop. They've formed a perception. Now, you cannot do better than that which you are bitter about. You cannot. You cannot deviate towards something and expect that thing to come your way. So whether you recognize it or not, consciously, you have a money avoidance script. Some people are uncomfortable with certain kinds of spendings, and it's not your money. Some other person chooses, you don't know how much money they have. They choose to spend money a certain way, and You have judged them and said, how can you spend that money on XYZ? You're not in their life. You don't know their experiences. You don't know the purpose of that thing. But you prejudged. I am telling you, it is a money avoidance spirit. Somewhere in your life, there are opportunities that are knocking on your door,
Mm,
and you will you interpret them as problems,
mm,
right? So an opportunity will come. You will unconsciously, through the lenses of perception, prejudge that thing as danger. Don't go there, right? And it's because of your own perception. So, right, the first thing, like I said, is to be able to identify your own coloring of your lenses and be honest with yourself, right? And then go through a process of reprogramming or reconditioning your mind to accept these things as possibilities for others and also possibilities for you, right? So that would be my advice to anyone who has wrong perception.
absolutely. And I think you're sort of spot on. And just like any other cognitive skill, whether it's with perception, with thoughts, with emotions, or with gut real, and in the subsequent weeks, we'll be talking about memory, and insight, judgment, mood, personality, and all that. Almost all of these aspects of the cognition of mind can be enhanced through the process of neuroplasticity, which is
Yeah.
the ability to modulate your brain through your experience. So, as long as you're intentional about it, if you think that you've got this altered perception or you've got this negative perception that is influencing and reflecting in your life, because as we've said over and over again, when you interpret your world in a negative way, you communicate to yourselves. Over a few hours ago, I was on a platform with Kole Shorian's platform in Daba, and we were discussing about wellness, talking about chronic inflammation. All right, how a lot of us live in a state of chronic inflammation, and chronic inflammation is a cellular process. It's not something that we perceive. My father passed away, at the age of 61 or 62 from complications of diabetes. He had been diabetic for a long time. He never knew it, but his body was all the cells were in a milieu of stress and inflammation. So stress and inflammation at the cellular level does not show on the face. It does not respect anointing. Jonathan Edwards died in his 30s. So the fact that you are the most anointed man, all right, will not anointing does not cure chronic inflammation. So for me, I think you should write that down and put that on Instagram. Anointing, and put my name there. Anointing does not cure chronic inflammation. All right? No, it doesn't. All right? And what most of us don't understand is that when we pray for healing and all that, healing heals the results of chronic. What are the results of chronic inflammation? Stroke, heart attacks, all right, cancers, all right, peripheral vascular disease, kidney disease. Those are the kind of things we go for healing for, isn't it? Oh, man of God, pray for me. Man of God, pray for me. Well, the man of God will pray for you. You get off the dialysis machine. All right. Will that stop your chronic inflammation? No. You
Mhm.
don't eat well. You don't exercise well. You have a poor, you don't sleep well. You don't sleep well. You have a poor mental state. Your perception is really altered and negative, and that sort of creates and perpetuates that state. So it's not just about. So when we're talking about wellness, it's a holistic. It's about what you eat. It's about how much of sleep you have. It's about how much of exercise you have. It's about the relationships, your mental and your spiritual. All of that has to be in sync for you to be well. I hope you guys are all listening and connecting with everyone who's watching right now. So that's what we are speaking to right now. So it's important to deal with that part of your perception because it's really, really key. And if you need help, sometimes some of these perceptions are really, really deep. And sometimes you need someone to hold your hand. You need, maybe a coach, a mentor to just help you get through that, and work on your mind in order for you to get through that. And so please do not be shy to ask for help. Now we're coming to the end of the program. I would like you to please put your questions. If you have questions, put them on the comment box, on the comment section, and don't be shy about any of your questions, please. We would like to have your questions. So Bakoli, do you have any other, sort of words about the topic of perception? And if not, do you want to just put everything together in a way that would sort of summarize what we've said? We've said a lot.
I think the only thing that I'll add is something you touched on, which is neuroplasticity. I just want to expound on it, and I think that that's one of the ways to be able to heal the brain. The mind does not know the difference between what is imagined and what is real.
Mm.
Doesn't know the difference, right? I saw a research that was done. I think it was University of Chicago, right? It was done with basketball players, and there were three categories of players, right? The first category of players were rehearsing free throws, right? And they asked them to rehearse it for 30 days. At specific times, they would rehearse, right? The second category of people, right, were rehearsing in their minds. So every day, they asked them to shut their eyes and imagine themselves holding the balls and tossing the balls in the net, right? So they did that same routine, but their own routine was via mental rehearsal, right? The third category of people did not do anything. So in the 30 days, they didn't exercise, right? Or they did not practice. And after 30 days, they brought them back to actually, do the free throws. So they compared their ratings before the exercise and on the actual day. Do you know what they found out? Those who practiced physically improved by 34%. Those who practiced in their minds improved by 33%. Those who didn't do it at all did not improve at all. In fact, some of them obviously got worse. So they found out that the effect of mental rehearsal is almost the same as the effect of actually doing the exercise. So the brain was forming neural pathways just based on the act of mental rehearsal, right? And what am I trying to get at here? I'm just really trying to reemphasize the point that the brain, there's something called neuroplasticity. Your brain can adjust by you mentally rehearsing your desired way of behavior so that when you get in real life, you can actually practice what you have mentally rehearsed. So identify the wrong perceptions you have and identify the right kinds of perceptions you would like to have. And through mental rehearsal, you can make those adjustments so that when the situations in real life show up that would have naturally caused you to form that perception, when they show up, you have created an alternative pathway in your mind as a way that you will take when those situations occur in real life, right? So that would be my candid advice as a solution to wrong or faulty perceptions.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, before we take any questions, too, for me, let me get you again to watch this video. All right. And for everyone watching, watch this video. Very interesting. I found it on YouTube. Okay. Let's just see what. And Tufi, I'll pause it at a point and I'll get to see what you think.
The monkey business illusion. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball. The correct answer is 16 passes.
Tufi, did you get it right?
I got it right. I actually
Is that
thought,
right?
yes.
Okay, let me.
The monkey business illusion. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball. The correct answer is 16 passes. Did you spot the gorilla? For people who haven't seen or heard about a video like this before, about half missed the gorilla. If you knew about the gorilla, you probably saw it, but did you notice the curtain changing color or the player on the black team leaving the game? Let's rewind and watch it again. Here comes the gorilla, and there goes a player, and the curtain is changing from red to gold.
Interesting. So you see, the aim of that video is not to the count of the number of passes, is to look at what you can actually. I played it twice, and maybe some people would have seen the gorilla the second time. All right, but you can imagine a gorilla passing through, and at 50% of time, people will not actually, because they were paying attention. And I actually, when I watched it, I didn't know that one of the black players left the field. I knew the curtain changed colors. So much happened in that scene. Do you know someone else may write? That's what happens with the Gospels. When people say, "Oh, all of them were saying different things," no, somebody else might have written in that account that Jesus turned the red curtain to gold. Another person will say that Jesus exchanged the gorilla for a player in the black, whatever. And another person will say, there were 16 passes, but still the same experience, different areas of focus. That's very key. Now, the last thing I would quickly mention is a study very similar, and I will take questions. I hope you have the questions too for me. You get the questions. Let me get you to just go get all the questions. And Michael, a very interesting one. I saw this study, and I want you to actually just say a few sentences about this study. I won't explain. I just want you to give us an explanation about why, and let's apply it to people's lives. So they got two sets of players they got a group of baseball players or football players, American football players, to kick a goal. All right. Before kicking the goal, they asked all of these players to estimate the width of the goal. So estimate the width of the goal. So all of them wrote it down. They estimated mentally the width of the goal just by seeing it from afar. Now each person kicked the goal. After that, they separated them into two groups: those that were successful and those that were unsuccessful. I think they kicked it about 10 times. 5 times. Anyone that scored 2 and less was unsuccessful. Anybody that scored more than 3 goals was successful. So they split them into two groups. They now asked them to re-estimate the width of the goal. Do you know that before they kicked the goal, the two groups had the same estimate? They had the same estimate. After kicking the goal, those that were unsuccessful, those that failed, they underestimated it. They reduced the size of the goal. So if they had by 10%, so if they had said that the width of the goal was 10 meters, let's just say 10 meters, when they re-estimated it, they said it was 9 meters. Now, those that were successful overestimated it because it was easy to score. So when they asked them, do you want to reevaluate, they changed their position and they made it bigger. Now, do you know that, now this is based on their experience, all right? They had a perception prior, but they changed their perception after their experience based on the outcome. Let me not explain it further, but Bankole, do you want to speak to this?
This is so amazing because that so let's just play it out in real life. That obviously tells you how we form narrations based on experiences of success and experiences of failure. So when you fail, you will always look for an explanation that justifies your position.
Mm.
You will always look for and it's unconscious. So we have unconsciously relegated our personal power to the background so that we can excuse ourselves for why we are where we are. And they are just false stories that we've told ourselves, right? The same way with success, right? When you do it, right, and you succeed, you know, all of a sudden there's a burst of life that you feel, and you have more cues for possibilities. And this is so instructive because that's why it is important to count your blessings. That's why it's important to be deliberate about recording your victories, because it creates the foundation for future possibilities, for more possibilities, right? So, and it's focus. So shifting your attention away from the fact that you failed, made a mistake, and focus on, sometimes it's important to remember the things God has done for you and stuff like that, because just that alone makes you believe in the possibilities of a brighter future and things like that, right? But when you are stuck in mistakes, stuck in problems, stuck in failures, and that's all you do, in our minds, we exaggerate those experiences. And here's what happens. In exaggerating the experiences, we now judge our future using the lenses of our past. So the brain can either be a map of the future or a record of the past, right? So what we now start doing is that we judge the map of the future using the lenses of the record of the past. And that obviously will determine what life will bring your way. The role of the brain is to ensure that, and if we get this thing, we'll understand how this brain. The role of the brain is to ensure that our outer experiences match our inner world. That is one key role of the brain. So it will always bring circumstances and situations and possibilities that match the status, the mold in your inner world. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I said it, Shibi, that's how I was seeing life. Now it has happened. I am telling you, it is how you saw it here that determined how you experienced it here. Right? Yeah, so that's my thought.
Wow. Now we've got a question. All right. And Tofumi, do you want to read this question for us? Or are you going to join the screen? Join the screen. Oh, sorry.
What is the role of perception as it relates to creativity? What is the role of perception as it relates to creativity?
Yeah. So I believe that your perception can be your reason for creativity or your excuse to not be creative, right? So one of the things I always say is every human being is a creator, because the circumstances and situations in your life were created by you. They weren't, it's not all that one of somebody doing you somewhere. You are the one doing yourself. You are the greatest, what's the word, ally to your results or your future, exact future, or your enemy. You can be your greatest enemy. And it's perception that determines that. So my point is everybody has the capacity of creativity, right? But the kind of perception you have will determine whether you end up being really creative, massively creative, or very destructive, right? And destruction is a negative creation. So we all have the capacity for creation. So that's really how perception plays the role. If you have the right positive mindsets and perceptions, you will be very creative, right? If you have the wrong mindsets and perceptions, maybe based on of past experiences, and you have now lied to yourself that you are not creative, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You will not be creative, right? So there's definitely a direct correlation there.
Absolutely. You're quite right about that. The only other distinction, and we'll talk about creativity. I think Naomi Osemudia is going to be joining us sometime in February to talk about creativity and imagination. Now, one of the other creativity is an extension of thought and critical reasoning. Okay, so you need thoughts to be creative. And I think it still goes back to the fact that perception is depends on the stimulus. So perception depends on your a sensation, sensory experience. Creativity does not. And in fact, our creativity, but our perception can feed, can lead us to that state of creativity, or it can be an excuse for it. God in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, came to the world wanting to design a world for the man that he loved. I like the way Miles Monroe put this in Genesis chapter 1, verse 0. If you open your Bibles to Genesis chapter 1, verse 0, according to Miles Monroe said, in the beginning, there was God, and God was alone, and God was in love, and he was in love with man. That was Genesis chapter 1, verse 0, because we existed before this world existed. We existed in him. So in the beginning, he was alone. Of all the things that God could be, one of the expressions of God would not allow God to exist alone. God can be all powerful on his own, all knowing on his own, all present and ever present on his own. But he could not be love on his own. Love has to be shared. No, you cannot be in love and be in love just on your own. So God needed an object of love, which was man. So God needed a home for the man. So he came to planet Earth and to our universe, and it was without form and void. So that was his perception. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 was a documentation of the perception. That perception led God to do something that had never been done before. The Spirit of God was moving on the face of the waters, and God said, there was a response to that sensory experience, and the response was a creation. And it took him 6 days to create something out of nothing. And what he created had not existed before. He created the sun, the moon, the planets, and everything out of nothing. So creativity does not depend on previous experience. That's why Apple today, they don't do customer surveys anymore. They don't ask for, give us, and most innovative guys now today, they don't do, what will customer, that was in the 80s and 90s. You sent, a survey to people. What do you need in your next product? No, innovation, it doesn't depend on customer, reviews and all those kind of things. The power of creativity is beyond that, making worlds that do not exist, bringing them into existence. We'll talk more about that as we go, but certainly perception can hinder your creativity or push you into that space of creativity, depending on how you interpret the situation. So for me, any other question?
Yes, we've got a few more. Thank you for those lovely answers. So YT Ari is asking, how does a person program his or her mind?
Okay, I think we've already touched a bit on this. Reprogramming your mind is installing a new program to erase or write off the previous one, right? So if you have negative programs that are running, you want to erase or rewrite those programs by installing positive thoughts. I don't know if you remember back then when we had tape recorders, right? You would put a tape that you recorded something on, and then you could still dub on that tape by writing a new program to erase the existing ones, right? And the first thing, like I keep saying, is self-awareness. Recognize the program that is currently at work. Identify, declare what it is. A program that is at work, for instance, maybe with respect to money, could be a money scarcity mentality. That could be a program. For some people, money is quick to enter, money is quick to go. Sorry, money is slow to enter for some people. That's their experience. And that's their belief. They believe money comes slowly, but it leaves quickly, right? A way to change that program is to rewrite an exact opposite of the current one, right? Money comes easily, frequently, and effortlessly to me, right? That's a new program that you want to install. How are programs installed? Number one is repetition, right? Repetition. The more times you say something, because a lot of these programs were written by repetition concepts, the more times you say these things, this new program, very soon it rewrites the old one. But it has to be a routine, a consistent, deliberate, dedicated effort to to rewriting the program, by saying this new one, right? So that's why people have a routine of affirmations, for instance. They say certain positive things repeatedly until it moves from their head to their hearts, until it becomes their default way, of thinking. So this is one thing that I would highly recommend. The second one, which I can also recommend, is visualization or mental rehearsal, because our thoughts have visual components to it. We think in pictures. So being able to meditate and mentally recreate, the new program that aligns with this new thing. So if you say money comes effortlessly, easily, and to you, what does that look like, right, for you? What image does your mind create when you think about that statement? And through mental rehearsal, going over those experiences in your mind and seeing how you don't need to struggle for money to come. Prior to that, your previous meditation or contemplation was that you had to toil for money to happen. So what does money coming easy look like? Can you begin to create those visual images and visit them consistently? The more times you do this, very soon you will notice that you are rewriting the old limiting programs that have existed in your mind.
Wow, amazing, amazing, amazing. Before we take any other one, maybe we'll take one or two more questions in the interest of time. Tiffany, do you want to just go through a few of our announcements?
Yes, we've got a couple of things. First of all, we have the Japanese book. I'll just pull up some banners quickly. So Japanese is an Amazon best-selling author. His first book is a free ebook that you can get from the following sites that are showing below. So this ebook talks about his values and his profession, and it just links the two together. So I would recommend it. It's a really lovely, lovely read. And his second book is his autobiography called Navigating Change My Story. So in this book, Dr. Nish shares timeless secrets for growth in an ever-changing world. You can visit nebrewery.com to order the book. It's available from Amazon, from Kindle, from Barnes and Noble. But yeah, it's just go to nebrewery.com to be able to grab your copy. Awesome. So I think we've got a few more questions before we round up. So Louise is asking, does overthinking have to do with perception? And how do I stop overthinking?
Oh yeah, well, most definitely. And I think that one major problem that people have is what they call hyper analysis or hyper vigilance, right? And yes, it has a lot to do with your perceptions of situations, and a lot of our perceptions were formed from childhood. Most people, the perceptions that they have today, the map through which they view life, right, came from when you were a child, right? And sometimes I find that a lot of people, by virtue of their upbringing, have embraced the conditioning of stress and hyper analysis and hyper vigilance, right? And a lot of times it came from, we install those programs from childhood. So let's take a typical African home, for example. When you were a kid, you were like a sponge. You had no conscious faculties to process or analyze things. You didn't know the difference between good or evil. You didn't know, right? You gained that consciousness over time. Now, as a child, your parents see something wrong, and they enter stress mode. and they don't know that they're communicating with you, right? Unconsciously. So they shout, don't go there, right? Now, now that action alone triggers hypervigilance, triggers stress, triggers hyperanalysis, right, in the child. So just that mere action, you know, signals an emergency, right? It signals stress, it signals a threat, and it signals the child to go into stress mode. So all of a sudden, you become hyper vigilant without realizing it. Always seeing something, seeing a problem in what really is not a problem, seeing something that other people are not seeing, hearing things people are not hearing. And people now begin to live their lives on a daily basis from the emotions of stress. Stress is something that should be experienced once in a while. Why? Because threats don't come every day. Threats come once in a while. We enter stress to protect ourselves. But what I now find is that people are living consistently believing that they are in a threat. So let me make it seem practical. The threat may not necessarily be a dog that's barking, or something like that. The threat could be your boss in the office, and just that person's presence triggers hypervigilance. It could be COVID-19. Just the information alone causes you to enter stress mode, and you're living from the emotions of stress. It could be social media. Some people see, every day something on social media that causes them to move into that state of hyper analysis, over vigilance, and that is living in stress without even consciously recognizing it, right? So I have found out that overthinkers usually fall within this category, right? When you are over processing information. The beauty of life is the mastery of living in the present moment. Let me take that again. The beauty of life is the mastery of living in the present moment, sufficient for today and today's worries. Stop bothering about tomorrow. Stop going back into yesterday. Can you live in the present? So one advice that I would have for an overthinker is to practice being present in the moment. And it comes with practice. Make it a project. What I find a lot of times is that the things that are beneficial for us, we rarely make projects out of them. And I'm saying, tell your brain that this is a project that I'm embarking on, to practice mindfulness and to practice being present in the moment. Now, your brain is a goal-seeking organ. Once you give it that instruction, it begins to look for those moments for correction. So start your day saying to yourself, I'm going to practice being present in the moment. So you move from just being a participant in your thought life to being an observer, and begin to catch yourself in those moments when you see yourself wandering into your past or wandering into your future, and choose to remain in the present moment. The more times you practice this, the more control that you begin to discover that you have over the randomness of thoughts that you normally have had, that leaves you in the state of stress, right? So this is my advice to these person.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. That was spot on. Spot on. Absolutely correct. I know there was another question about perception in relationship, blah blah blah. Unfortunately, I don't think we have enough time to start talking about relationship now, particularly in the context of perception. Macaulay Williams is a very busy man, and I know for me it's past midnight there. Is that correct? In
Almost
Christchurch.
20 more minutes.
Okay, to midnight. All right, so there's church tomorrow for some people here, particularly down under. It's almost 10 p.m. here as well, so for all the people from the street end. So we'll probably we have to wrap up now. All right, but if you're then in a relationship and your negative perceptions are making you and you try to apply what we talked about. If you're still struggling with that, get a relationship coach, because basically that's what they'll be doing. What a relationship coach will help you walk through is how you can, delete and boost negative perceptions, and sort of rewire your mind or renew your mind and rewire your brain. So I certainly recommend what we have been here before. So why not get should be of help to you. Bankole Williams, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. You are
Yeah.
really of great help to us. Thank you for this. Thank you for doing this, and I hope we'll have more collaborations in the future. So, guys, I want you to please say, express your thanks to Bankole Williams. Describe how this has been beneficial to you. So, put it out there. I like to see that in the chat box. Please just put it out there. Let's express our thanks. Yes. So, can you just highlight some of those comments on the screen? Those comments here. So thank you for what you've done for us today. The words and the expressions and the examples, all of that. So thank you so much for giving us your time today, Martha Williams. We really appreciate that. Now, for everyone, please, I want to encourage you. If you're not a member of my Facebook group, Change Makers International, I encourage you to do that. That's a place where we intend to build leaders. The goal is to build leaders who are able to create change. So that's why we call it Change Makers International. And of course, we'll be leveraging our understanding of neuroscience, on the understanding of mindset, so that we can create change in our world. That's why this program is Brain Mindset Change. So I'll encourage you to join Change Makers International, and we'll get a lot of value. This new month of February, we're running a very good promotion. So for me, we've got something big in the bag, isn't it?
Yes,
Great
we do.
Absolutely. We won't let it out now, but that would certainly be um, um, coming up very soon. I'll also encourage you to like my YouTube channel as well and spread the word out there. Next week, what's happening next week? Next week we have Bean Bola, Coach Beans. Bean Bola will be coming on to speak to us about emotional trauma. We're going to be talking about going back to emotions, but we'll be looking at trauma now. Trauma is what we'll be focusing on. So please, if you've got somebody who's going through an emotional trauma, they are finding it hard, life is difficult, they're going through a lot of stress, please, I want to encourage you to please bring them here for this program. So we have, and it's going to be on a Friday. So, today's program is holding on a Saturday. It's going to be Friday. So we're going back to the usual time, Friday. Please let us take note of that. It's going to be Friday. If you are in Lagos, Nigeria, it's 8 p.m. In the United Kingdom, it's 7 p.m. In Australia, here, it's going to be, we're going back to the early morning show at 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. in New Zealand, Auckland time of Christchurch time. All right, so we have Bibola Oguntunde, who's a trauma-inspired coach. She has a lot to offer. So I want to encourage you, please. We're going to be sharing this on my page as well. Please let's do that. Now, Bankole Williams is somebody who has been an immense blessing to me. I first met him on Feladroto's program, Speak for Gold, which I will encourage every aspiring speaker, thought leader, and speaker to attend, to Speak for Gold. But he's a very, personable person. I reached out to him, sent him a DM, and he was kind enough to reply me, and that's how we connected. So, Bankole, I really celebrate and appreciate you, your simplicity, your humility, all right, and the time that you've connected with me the way you are, right? Don't take it for granted. I really appreciate you for that. Now, if people want to connect with you, how can they do this, please? How can they do this? I know we have your Instagram, I know somewhere, we'll probably put that up as well, but is there any other way?
Yeah, if people want to connect with me, Instagram at I am Bankole, right? They can reach out to me there. If they have questions they want to ask, they can just send an email to info@bankolewilliams.com. Info@bankolewilliams.com.
So info@bankolewilliams.com. Bankole, my wife is also saying that I should say thanks to you. I think she just sent me a text message. She's watching. It's in the background. So
Lovely. Please extend my love to her.
yes, I will. So I will. So she's watching you right now. She's hearing you. So thank you so much. So we appreciate you. We thank you for being here, and we thank you. And before we all go, I'd like to say a shout out to Tofumi. Tofumi. Yeah, Yeah, so for me, you're special to me. You know that you're special to me, and to Olaimi as well. So I'll have to say that. So you're a special person. All right, but I appreciate your service. I appreciate your desire. So for me is I don't know how to explain this. That she does not work for me. She's my colleague. We're together in this assignment, and that's why I'm putting her on this platform. She wants to be in the background sending emails. I said no, come up. She's very shy, extremely shy. So I said no. I want you to be with me here. I want people to see you, all right? Because we're in this together. She's very creative person. And if I want to just imagine things, I'll just give her a call and we can talk about things and just exchange ideas. So thank you, Tofumi. You've made this work, this new expression of me possible. And I thank Samuel Kundayo, who is also there. Samuel Kundayo, where is he? Samuel Kundayo. Samuel Kundayo is somewhere there. He's been throwing in comments. Samuel Kundayo is my coach. He's somewhere there. And so Samuel Kundayo, I really appreciate you. All right, guys, I think we should bring it to an end right now. Thank you so much. We would end with that song again that we started with, and Chain Breaker. On our way to Newcastle today, with my family, we were listening to this song online, and I thought, yes, what a powerful song, and what a way to.
If you've got a student in year
no,
9, year 10, year 11,
no,
or
no,
year
no,
12, you're going to.
I don't want the YouTube ad. Oh God, this YouTube ads. Alrighty. So I think it's be a very good one to end on this note. All right, guys, thank you so much. Bankole Williams, thank you so much. We celebrate you. We'll be in touch, okay? I'll let you go right now. God bless you so much. All right, thank you, every single person. Thank you so much for being here. We'll look forward to seeing you again next week, Friday. We'll send you all the details, okay, as we go.